back, everyone, to another edition of the On the Wagon podcast. We are a sobriety podcast with a shot of comedy. I'm your host, Dan Spanbauer, and today we are going to dive into a story that I've been waiting to tell for a long time. It is my OWI story. It's not just going to be the OWI night when the arrest occurred, but everything that transpired afterwards. So I've been looking forward to tell this story. There's some crazy things that happen inside the story, but more as I think about it, more as the years go by here. This happened in January of 2012. I'm really just blessed that nothing. I didn't get in an accident, didn't hurt anybody or anybody else. So looking back at it now, it was a really lifelong lesson, something I'll never forget, and something I'll never do again. Even when I was still drinking, pretty heavily, I didn't drive. I really I stopped doing that as much as possible. There was a few occasions I know driving home from weddings and things like that where I could have been pretty questionable, but for this time, when I did get pulled over and arrested for this, I was, and you'll know, way over the limit. Let's just put it that way. But before we get into this story, I just want to see how everybody's doing. Again, we are on just after week 1 of quarantine here in Wisconsin. The curve, we're trying to get that curve down, with the new cases and the death toll is rising, I should say. It's just a scary time for everyone out there, and I just wish everybody, them and their families and their loved ones and friends to stay safe. Keep boosting that immune system as much as possible. I know Jenny and I, we take our vitamin mocktail every morning with all kinds of stuff. So that is kind of my side job, as well as a health and wellness guy, and really sell products that I believe in and that I've used for 2 years that have really pushed my health over the edge. And now with no more drinking alcohol, I really, for 5 months here, it's been awesome. My body feels great. The last 2 days, yesterday I ran 2.5 miles, solo 2.5. Then the day before I did our speed workout with Jen, where we did about 2 miles, and also did a speed workout on our hill where we do some sprints up our long garbage hill for you Oshkosh people who recognize that name. Usually a sledding hill, but a great training hill. And what has really been awesome, seeing this community come together, trying to support local businesses as much as possible. Dine out if you can. Twice a week, that's kind of how Jenny and I have been doing it. Even maybe a third time. Just they're not profiting a whole lot. These are paying the bills with these orders. So keep supporting local. But the other thing I want to say before we get going is really excited to see people out and about walking. They're keeping their social distancing, but out walking with their families who they live with, and taking the dogs for a walk, running. A lot of bikes out. I know the weather's starting to get better here, but keep doing that. It's a huge stress relief, and it's good to get outside and exercise, because once this is all over, trying to get back to normal and we will recover from this, but keep those going, right? Keep the exercise going. It's a great thing to get out and walk, even if it's for a half hour. Get outside in some fresh air. Sunlight's also good for the vitamins as well. So there's my rant on that. Let's get into the OWI story. Now, this story I've been waiting to tell for a long time. It's a crazy story for me. There's a lot of DUI stories where you read the paper and you just get sick to your stomach seeing people that get 4, 5, 6, 7 OWIs, true, like, that really just do not get it and don't learn. And I know a lot of it is the alcoholism, where they're going to bars, they're going to, they're drinking all day, they have to go out and drive to get something. That's where those issues take place. For me, in 2012, I'm trying to think how old I was. I think I was about 24, 25. It kind of, it all snowballed before I even started drinking, really. So let's start from the beginning. So the beginning of the week. So I'm still coaching JV basketball right now at a local high school. Earlier in the week, I had noticed that my college, the college where I went to play basketball for 2 years, small junior college just south of Oshkosh here, it's about a 25-minute drive, was running their alumni night, right? So their alumni night usually consisted of the women's team would come back and play alumni game, and then the guys would play afterwards. So I asked our head coach, I said, hey, I'd really like to be at this alumni game, see some old friends and teammates and people from the school. We had a really good 2 years there where we actually had a pretty good molded, group of people, not just basketball players, but, friends from the college, because everybody kind of funneled in. It was a commuter school. I always kind of say it was like a nice post-high school college, if you want to put it in those terms. Anyway, so he goes, yeah, well, sure, yeah. I said, well, I'm going to have to miss this game, and I was assistant coach at the time. He's like, yeah, no problem. I know that's really important to you to see, get together, and I had missed the previous years. My previous job was custom apparel, so we had printed up all the alumni shirts, so I had a big connection. So Friday comes around. It was Friday night. I believe the girls played at 5, and then the guys were going to play at 6:30. So I had to drop the shirts off earlier. So we left Oshkosh a little bit earlier. I took one of my best friends down who I went to college with there, played basketball with. One of my great friends to this day still. Picked him up, went down. Knew we were gonna drink that night, right? We knew we were gonna do that, but we had brought our gym bags because we knew we were gonna get a sweat in, get some laughs. So we get there. Instead of watching the girls' game, there wasn't too many of our buddies were there yet because we weren't scheduled to play till 6:30. So instead of sitting in the stands, we dropped the T-shirts off and decided to go to a townie bar. And one thing led to another. I think we had a couple beers, a couple shots of what did we have? Not Sambuca. Maybe it was Sambuca or a Jaeger bomb or something. We were feeling good, so we drank there for probably about 45 minutes to an hour. Pretty buzzed before getting back to the gym. So then we go ahead and play this alumni game. Basically half in the bag, drunk. But what it was fun. It's a fun game or whatever, just to kind of get to see the people. And so that happens. Play the game. So then there's a meet, like a social afterwards. So everybody gets ready, showers, gets regular basic Friday night going out clothes on. At this point, so now we are leaving campus, which is on, let me see, the east side of town. So we head back west towards, Main Street where all the bars are. I think one of the socials was at a local bar. Had a great time, mingling and all that. As some people start leaving, some people aren't as heavy of drinkers as some of us were. They start leaving, so, we're in it for the long run, right? So we go to, at this point, pretty drunk. Remember kind of going to this spot. It was some kind of Irish bar or whatever. I remember the lights were super dim and dark in there. Continued to rip shots there. And then for the nightcap, we finished off at another local establishment. I won't say which one it was because that was the last one. Probably shouldn't have been served there. But this was kind of the last kind of party bar we were at for the night. So as, I think it was about 1:30 rolls around, in the morning. I get the idea, said, hey, let's get back to Oshkosh. And so we could sleep on our own beds. We really didn't have a game plan where we were going to sleep. My buddy goes, let's just stay in town. My sister's in town. Let's just stay at her place or her apartment or whatever. They're having some people over. We can have kind of a post-bar thing. I'm like, nah, let's just make it back. We can maybe hit French Quarter, one of the local bars in Oshkosh, one more time, or one of the downtown bars for one more drink. Just idiotic, so stupid. Why would I even think that? But once I get rolling, and at this point I'm not blacked out, but I know what I'm doing, but don't know what I'm doing. I'm well over the limit as we find out. So he's like, all right, let's head home. He's always trusted me driving in the past, driving drunk, which isn't great. But so we get out of the city, and instead of taking the main interstate, which would probably have not got me arrested. I always think that I remember strictly going through that mind, like, do I take the back highway or do I take the main highway, right? Because at 2 a.m, there's not much traffic on either one. But in retrospect, it was probably more dangerous anyways to take 45 back home to Oshkosh because it's one-lane traffic, right? So, like I said, crazy. I didn't even think of this. Shouldn't have been in the car. Shouldn't have been driving. Decided to take the Lake Road to take 45 home. So we're about halfway home, I would say. So we're right on the border of Winnebago and Fond du Lac County. So there's, we're past, if you guys are familiar with TJ's, we're past that a little bit. There's a rest stop or a place where you could park and a lot of boat launching. Driving, probably listen to music, whatever. Don't think anything of it. It's probably 2 a.m. here, and all of a sudden you see those lights start coming on. So now you think, oh crap. What? And I knew I wasn't speeding. I knew that because I knew I had probably the cruise control on. So I was hoping at this point, okay, he's just coming from behind me to go around me. So I was smart, pulled over to the side. No, that wasn't the case. He had tracked me, right? He had got me. He was looking for me. Within a second, there was another squad car right behind me as well. So at this point, when you see it, right? You're getting an OWI, no question. I knew 100%. I was well over the limit. I mean, we've been drinking since 5 p.m. It's now 2:30 probably in the morning. Just stopped drinking probably 45 minutes ago. No question, I'm over the limit. So it's a Fond du Lac County sheriff, right? So it's a sheriff working the night shift. Another one pulls up in an SUV, tells us to step out of the car. So we do that. He asks us some questions. Have you been drinking tonight? I said, yeah, I've been drinking. He's like, would you be willing to do the test, the sobriety test? Feel that, sure, I'll do those. I mean, at this point, obviously he probably smelled a strong odor of alcohol. I never actually read the full police report all the way through. I just picked out the main points, which we'll get into, which I should go back and get that, post that. I'm sure I could, but at this crazy time, nobody's working in the city offices, but you can get your police report. Anyways, Buddy steps out of the car. He's being, I would say, being a little, not obnoxious, but asking goofy questions. Start doing the sobriety test 1 through 5. I passed 4 out of 5 of them. Or there's 4 out of 5 where they claim that there was really like 2 of them that I did, but I still know that I remember doing 4 pretty good. So probably should have taken the police officer's word for, or the sheriff's word for it. But, stand on 1 foot, walk the line, count the steps, heel to toe, ABCs, which that's hard to do backwards anyways, whatever. I think they try to make sure that you can hit to a certain number. They don't want you to go all the way through, but if you can do like 5 or 6 in a row from behind, backwards, I think that's kind of how it plays out. So then he's like, can we need to search the vehicle? They do a vehicle search. I'm like, sure, there's nothing in here. We weren't drinking in the car. The difference here was I was driving my dad's SUV at the time. So apparently there was a taillight out. Now that's what we found out later on, and we did check it, and there was a taillight out. So that was the original reason that he pulled me over. But then and we'll get into why I asked more, he said, oh, there was some swerving going on, which, how do you deny that? I'm driving over the influence, but I was going the speed limit because I was not speeding. I was going, 55 or 56, I think it was that. So that always comes into play. But there was a taillight out. So when you're driving that late at night, sheriffs and police officers and state troopers, they are looking for certain things, and they're always looking for the little things like that. A taillight, a blinker light out, a headlight out, stuff like that. So that was the initial reason that he stopped, but he did add on that there was some slight swerving, as I'm slurring my words, even though I have coffee with me. So that was the initial reason. So he goes through, searches the car, finds nothing, puts handcuffs on me, says my Miranda rights. My buddy starts saying, well, where can we get him? He goes, well, we're in Fond du Lac County, so we have to go all the way back to Fond du Lac County to the sheriff's department right downtown, about a block from what bar we were at. So get handcuffed. First time that's ever happened. Interesting. But when you're drunk, it doesn't really set in until probably 2 days later. So get taken down to the department. But on the way back, I noticed there was somebody in the front seat. It was a woman, or a younger woman in the front seat. Well, apparently they had a ride along that night. So she was training to be a sheriff or a police officer, so she was in the car. So when I get drunk, I'm always really talky, chatty. At this point, I'm locked in the back seat. I got the bars, handcuffed. So they started talking, and the sheriff was nice enough, laughing. And I said some things. There was a thing in the police report that I read. I asked him who was a better quarterback at the time, Aaron Rodgers or Eli Manning. I just stupid, it's funny, like things that the cop was probably thinking, okay, this guy is not a bad person. He just had too much to drink and made a dumb mistake. So that's kind of what the vibe I got from him. It was really respectful, both sheriffs, during the whole ordeal. Instead of when you get pulled over, they can tow your car, which is another additional, a couple $100. They said, no, we'll drive the car up to the rest stop so you can get it tomorrow morning, or when you are released and when you are sober to get your car. So that was like super nice of them because they didn't have to do that. They could have towed it and probably got a couple $100 out of that. So we get down to the jail. So at the time, I had refused the breathalyzer, which in fact was the worst decision I could have made if I had any chance of fighting this, even though I wouldn't have. But right, retrospect, you should always just do the breathalyzer, because the breathalyzer is actually not always 100% accurate. So that's why there's a lot of factors that go into that. But I refused it, and when you refuse a breathalyzer in the state of Wisconsin, you're charged automatically on one charge. I can't remember exactly what, because when you get an OWI or a DUI, same thing. You're also charged a second charge with operating PAC, which is something with your blood content, with your alcohol blood content. So it's like two charges, but that's actually the main one that you get arrested. You get arrested for the OWI, but you get charged and sentenced with the PAC, operating PAC, actually, even though they're both on your record. So they're kind of like a hand-in-hand charge. I don't know if that's changed since then, but that was what I was told at the time. Make it back down to downtown Fond du Lac, probably over 3 a.m. Go through the whole process. Now, this is like crazy for you. I know a lot of you that maybe have listened have been arrested and went through the process before. This is something I have not. The jail at 3 a.m. is a wild place because there's a lot of drunks in there. There's people that are on drugs. There's a lot of people that have mental issues. There's a lot of people that are having domestic abuse issues. It's just not a great place to be at that time of night, or any time of the day, I should say. But really, really messy at that time. Get to the jail. The officer goes, "Hey, here's the deal. You refused your breathalyzer. Would you be willing to submit a blood sample?" He said for your alcohol content. He goes, "This is going to really factor. It's almost 100% accurate. So if you have a chance of not being over, even though, he kind of said, I think you're over. I think you know that you're over, but to have this," and I was being respectful at this time. I said, "Yeah, sure. So take the blood test." So what happens with the blood test is they don't do anything with that. They just take that sample and they ship it off or send it off to the Wisconsin State lab. So it's down in Madison, the lab where they'll check your blood, and they'll check the BAC content. So then when you are officially arraigned or brought in for your first initial court appearance, they have that on there. So at that time now, it's not a charge. They can release you to somebody, right? So you take the mugshot, you take the fingerprint. They put you in the drunk tank cell, basically what it is. So you're put in a cell with others at the time. Until you wait to get picked up. Well, obviously my buddy's not picking me up. He's drunk. He has no car. He's not getting me. He can't pull me out. They can't release you just to get released. You have to be released to somebody like a parent or someone that a family member, I should say, so they can get you home safely. So they can't just say, I can't just say, my mom's gonna pick me up out front. They're not just gonna let you walk out the door and pick you up. Like it's gotta go through all this stuff. So it's this late. I know I made a huge mistake. This is a huge, huge issue. This is going to be bad, for telling my parents and girlfriend at the time, and it's not going to be good. So I'm just like, you know what? It's this late. I'm just going to wait. Like, I'm not going to call my parents. I'll just spend the freaking night in here, which was just, it was an experience. I'm glad I experienced it, but, I was kind of thinking smart there. I'm like, all right, I made this mistake. I'm not going to involve anybody else into this tonight. Like, we're just going to deal with it tomorrow. Cop said, all right, well, then so you're going to get this, an actual jail cell then, and you're going to share it with somebody else, one other person probably, depending on the capacity tonight. So I'm like, oh, great. So I just said to him, I said, hey, I said, you know what? I've been pretty respectful to you. I've been pretty, good with this. Do not put me with somebody that's gonna just do not put me with a wild man. He's like, well, I can't say, He was kind of laughing, but he's like, if it's at capacity, you're going where you're going. This is on you. So get placed in the cell with another guy, probably around my age. I don't know. He was drunk. He was on some kind of thing, but he wasn't. He wasn't to the point where he was out of control, but he was on something. Comes in here, it says whatever. You get your own. You each have 2 beds. They take your belts, but they didn't put me in a jumpsuit. They let me just wear my white tee and my jeans, but no shoes. But they're like socks, jeans, and my white tee. They let me keep on. No belts and no shoelaces and stuff like that. Obviously for, whatever. So this guy, we start talking in there. He was from Fond du Lac area. Just blitzed out of his mind as well. He finally goes to me, goes, hey, you want to get out of here? And I said, yeah, I'd love to get out of here, but I don't think the way I want to get out of here the way you're getting out of here. So this cell that I was in, it wasn't actually a bar cell. It was actually like hard stone, doors. And I guess that's the best way to explain it. Like it was a true solidified room with just a little pixie glass window that you could look out, and then there's a tray, like an opening for a tray where they could bring food. So this guy that I'm with had said, I'm getting out of here. Like at this point, I just want to sleep. Like I'm really starting to not pass out, but I need to just pass out basically. So this guy, I don't know whatever happened to him. I've always wanted to look him up and see, but he said, I'm getting out of here. I'm done with this. So this guy has been a repeat offender, I'm pretty sure. So what he did is he went over to the toilet seat, sat on his knees. So I'm like, okay, is this guy going to start throwing up or puking or getting sick or what? No, he didn't do that. He started banging his head on the toilet seat. Boom, 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 hitting his head, pretty hard. Like not as hard, and this is like a metal toilet seat. Within seconds, there's a camera in there and 2, guards come in or sheriffs come in and pull him out of there. And I look at the one guy, I said, I thought this was, didn't you listen to what I said? And they kind of just slammed the door on, whatever. So they wheeled this guy out. So now I got the place to myself, I guess you could say. Just an incredible experience. I just could not believe this guy was just slamming his head as hard as possible on there. So ended up sleeping a bit. At 7:30 comes around to get this knock. I'm like, yes, getting out of here, perfect. Extremely hungover at this point, but still drunk. No, it's not. The first knock comes. Guy comes in with a breathalyzer, takes the breathalyzer, looks at it, laughs, or kind of smiles and walks out. So apparently, what he did is you got to be under the limit before they can let you leave until they release you. So at this point, that I was still over the limit, I was required to get picked up by somebody. They would not just let me out on the street because I was still over the limit. So they didn't want me going back to my car, which makes sense even though it was miles and miles away, and then getting in the car, getting pulled over again, or getting in an accident, and then getting another one that same night because I was still over the limit. So now I was required to get picked up by an adult. In the meantime, my friend makes it back. As what happened was the police officer would not drive him back to Oshkosh. They drove him back to Fond du Lac since we were still in Fond du Lac County. They dropped him off and he slept at his sister's house, which we should have did in the first place. He comes back at 8 a.m. to say, I'm looking for my friend. And the guy goes on the mic because before they buzz in, he goes, well, we got a lot of people in here. We got a lot of people in here. We don't know who you. So the guy says my name, Dan. He goes, oh yeah, he's in here, but he's restricted release. So now my friend's freaking out, thinking, oh, what did he really do in there? A restricted release? That sounds terrible. Even though I was just over the limit still. I mean, I was only in there for 4 hours at that time, probably after I got with all the stuff that went through. So then another knock. So I'm like, okay, maybe I can leave. This is probably about an hour later, probably about 8:39, 9 a.m. I would say. And now I'm just sitting in there, just now I'm starting to think, it's starting to set in, what the heck? What did I do? They drop a breakfast tray in there, breakfast was not. I was not touching it. I was actually really hungry because I didn't eat dinner, of course, from that night after the basketball game. I'm sure. Breakfast was an egg bagel. It was and a thing of Fritos, not in the bag, and some orange drink. That's what it was, like an orange Kool-Aid drink. Wasn't touching that. So that kind of goes on. Start feeling better. Actually, the hangover. The hangover was really bad at first, but it actually wore off. So I don't know if that was like being in jail was like, okay, like my body like went into overdrive and flushed the alcohol out. So finally, I said, okay, I'm gonna call. I gotta call my mom or my dad. Well, my mom was apparently like out of town, or not out of town, but was on a day trip somewhere. Like I don't know, she was shopping somewhere. So at that time, I don't think she had a cell phone, but I didn't remember the number offhand. So they let me have my cell phone. Cell phone's dead. Great. Won't let me charge it. Great. So now I don't, I remember my house landline number at the time, but nobody was home. So then I remember my dad was working where I was, he was running the business. Thank God he was working at the shop that day because I didn't remember his phone number offhand. Called the shop, he goes, yeah, I'll come down and grab you. So like, my dad's always been really, never yelled at me for what I did with stuff like that, with my drinking issues, but just like talked to me in a great way saying, hey, this has got to stop. This has got to be, you can't be like, it's only going to get worse. Like he kind of said that in his own way. So he's always been very forgiving in that sense, but gave me some like, hey, time to shape up, buddy. So he picks me up about noon. So I was in the jail for about 8 hours, I think. I remember the perfect day. It was a Saturday, perfect weather out in January, actually a little warmer. Decided not to get my car at the time because I think I was still not over, but I didn't feel comfortable getting. I said, let me just get home, showered, and then I'll have my mom or somebody come take me back out that way. Just because I wanted to get secured, let my mom know what was going on. So at that time, and I should say at this time I was not living in my apartment. I was living back at my parents' house after the college house. So get dropped off. Get myself together. Had Culver's. I'll never forget. It was like the best meal I've ever had compared to like what what I was seeing in the jail cell. So things set in. Let my mom know. Obviously very disappointed in me. Let my girlfriend know at the time. Very extremely disappointed in me and like, just not good. So like now like the depression, anxiety is setting in from crap. Like what are the next steps? Like how high was my, like now I'm starting to think like how high was my BAC? Like if your BAC is super high, you're getting in even more trouble if it's your first offense. I didn't have a record before this. I had a speeding ticket before this, right? So it wasn't like something major, but you never know. So now I'm starting to freak out a little bit. Remember, go get my car. Took a nice nap. Well, this funny story, this is where it's just like, this is just insane. Like think at it now. So I think I'm 24, 25. So kind of post college years. So it really shouldn't be taking a binge drinking should have been minimally subsided. Remember one of my good friends who's still a great friend today, lived down the street, a neighborhood buddy. He had a bunch of people home from Madison during their winter break. So he's having like a big get together down there. Well, those guys don't know what happened to me from the night before, but they start calling, texting, and now I'm starting to feel better. This is like 5 or 6 o'clock. And I remember my mom goes, what are you talking about? I'm like, well, I'm thinking about going down there and hanging out and having probably going out for the night. And she's like, are you insane? Are you like, you're not doing that. You're not going out. Do you understand what's coming for you right now? Like with all this, with the money that you're going to have to spend on this. And I'm like, well, I can't get in trouble again. Like that was my mindset. Like I honestly, if she didn't stop me, if my mom wasn't home, I would have went out that next night. 100%. And would have told that story and people would have laughed about it, but then nobody would have saw the true consequences that I was about to deal with. So shout out to my mom for keeping me at home that night and making sure that I didn't do anything else stupid. So I remember that night, just trying to put things into perspective. It kind of hit me later on in that night. I remember sitting down talking to my mom and saying, this was probably a long time coming. I've drunk a lot before that, a lot of times, and more dangerously, I would say, in the city. So I remember one particular time I was going through a horrible breakup. with my first true girlfriend. I'll never forget this. Went out. Wasn't that drunk. Like, literally, I had my old car, my beater Saturn, the green Saturn. But was just not in a good headspace. I had beers that night. We always went out Thursday nights. I was like going through that, and I just remembered. I'm just driving home tonight, and it was like 1 a.m. Driving down Witzel and Oshkosh, and all of a sudden, like, two cops I could see are coming behind me fast, and I'm like, oh crap! I'm by myself in this car, right by West Point Bank. There, pulled aside, and sure enough, they zoomed past me. Like, that should have been the first time I should have said, hey. You can't be doing this. Like, stop doing this, because I was so nervous, and it was an experience I've never imagined in my life. And I know I wasn't that drunk, but I was over the limit for sure. So that was that story. So now it's the process now of the court date set. So you're getting letters in the mail. The biggest thing that I could not believe is the amount of mail I got within 4 days from lawyers. So they must like have some on CCAP. Like, the initial thing goes on CCAP or get notified. I was getting mailings. I was getting booklets. I was getting phone calls. Just stuff from every kind of defense OWI lawyer in the state. It seemed like. So that was, I always like kind of say like how I compare this, as a comedy podcast with my retirement from drinking. It was like almost I was getting recruited. I was getting these recruitment letters from coaches, aka lawyers. Hey, we want you to be a part of this. Just crazy stuff. So for like 2 weeks, I was just getting bombarded with mailings and phone calls. So then finally, I get home one night. I actually subsided my drinking quite a bit afterwards. Start working, almost starting to put in extra hours at work because I know what's coming. The blessing is what happened was I was living at home, was not charged rent at the time, so I had a lot of money cash flow in there, so I had a lot of built up money where I could pay a lot of stuff out. So the first thing that came was from the sheriff's department, or from the thing where it's actually your court date and all that document. So I had a court date scheduled for like end of February, so which would make sense. About a month and a half afterwards. I was not required to be in court, which I thought was interesting because, and for my lawyer friends out there, that probably makes sense. But I was thinking, okay, my first one, I'm guessing I was pretty high over the limit, so I had 2 charges pending against me: an OWI first offense and a PAC over .15. So now I know that this was pretty bad, the PAC. So one of the biggest things with the PAC is that if you're, you plead guilty and you're sent, one of your sentence or one of your stipulations is if you're over that requirement or over that limit, you are required a breathalyzer in your car to start your car all the time. The thing goes off to check every 10 minutes. It's a hassle. It's also $100 to install, and it's like $40 a month. So now I'm like, okay, I have no idea what I'm getting sentenced here. Make another ginormous mistake here. Didn't get a lawyer because I didn't want to fight it. I knew I was going to plead guilty or no contest. Didn't want to do that. But I didn't go to the court date, right? I didn't attend the court. So I could have at least went up in front of the judge and said, so at least said something. Not saying I wouldn't have been let off, but I think I was throwing the book at me. Everything that I could have possibly got came to me. And before that though, then this thing shows up from the Wisconsin lab. So now my mom's like, what is this? Because I'm like, oh, I don't know. Like, this is that. But I didn't realize that it was, set out to somewhere else. So I get it. So my official BAC came, my blood alcohol content from that night. Now, .08 is the legal limit, or the limit. Like, if you're at .08 or over, you can be arrested for this OWI. Well, my blood alcohol content came back at .27. So you guys can do the math on that. .27. As I've been reading on stuff and listening to other people's stories, a lot of people go into blood alcohol poisoning at .3 or .31, and I was driving a car normal for the most part. I had a taillight out and slight swerving on a highway. So now, that should have been an even bigger trigger sign that I have an alcohol problem. But I treated it as, I'm young and stupid, and went out and did that. So That's what I was at. Did go to the court date. A couple days later, get this huge packet of stuff. So obviously it was a no contest, pled guilty. I had a bunch of things that my sentencing and stuff obviously was not put in jail, did not serve time, but I had a lot of other stipulations. I had a 1 year suspension of my license from the DMV, so I did not have a license for 1 year. I was required to put breathalyzer in my car for 16 months, so over the time of the suspension. So now how that works is I could have got my like a temporary license. It wasn't a full license, but it was just I could just basically drive to work and back for that. So I could be driving, but that's how that could be in. I also got a victim panel assess thing, which is I didn't actually attend and don't know how I got out of this. But I was never sent the extra information. So I had 1 year to complete where I would go to a meeting where a family member of a OWI drunk driving case or an alcohol related issue where a family member died or was severely injured talk and told their story. I did not have to do that for some reason. They did not ever send the papers to me, and it's not on my record as of now either. So don't know why that wasn't sent. I was also placed with a $1,800 fine. That fine was for everything included. That was just for the arrest and the two charges paid to the city or the Fond du Lac County that was paid to. You had 90 days to pay that. But then there was two other things. Let me see. The other one was a drunk driving class I had to take for first and second time offenders. That was at a local Fox Valley Technical College here. It was a 4-week course, twice a week, Tuesdays and Thursdays. I took it from 9:30 to noon. That was $400. So now we're up to $2,200, not including the breathalyzer, not including the getting my license back when I could. It's $200 to get your license reinstated after the year. And then the final one, which is a city or a student, my county, is an alcohol assessment. So this is where you sit in with a counselor basically, and they assess your drinking habits. I don't know how this counselor didn't do a very good job, or if I lied, because what happens is you have to bring a parent or a family member in with you. So you get interviewed first. Then I get interviewed. And they kind of match, okay, let's see where he's at. Well, I was kind of just considered a rebel college kid, still binge drinking from time to time. When in retrospect, I wish they would have said, hey, you got to stop doing this now or stop drinking or figure it out. And they didn't really say that. So that was a real waste, I would say, of everybody's time. Because 8 years later, I was still drinking very heavily. So that was that. A little bit about the post OWI, things that I never did. I drove without my license quite a bit. Let's say that. So that was really stupid. I actually got pulled over once driving my mom to somewhere. We were going to the Princeton flea market, something stupid. Well, and I don't know why I was driving her there. This was like 2 years later. I didn't get my license back for 3 years. I waited it out. So anyways, I got a ticket for that too. I had to go back to Fond du Lac County Court because I was in the city of Ripon. It was driving while revoked. That was another couple $100. Stupid. I think it was $250, $300 fine. But I had to appear in court then for that one. So that was just like negligence on my part. So what I thought in my head was like, okay, I don't drive that much anyways. I have a beater car, so I never drive anywhere besides the city. I'm just gonna wait this out, right? I'm gonna wait the year suspension. I'm gonna wait out the breathalyzer, so I don't have to put the breathalyzer in. But if I have to drive, I'll drive. But if I can get picked up from work and stuff like that, I'll do that. So I waited it out, but learning in the class is you can't do that. It starts when the state gets that thing in that says, oh, your breathalyzer's been installed, and that you have your temporary license. How the state screwed this up, I have no idea. I waited it out. I did not get my license. I did not never had a breathalyzer. I saved all that money by not driving, not having a vehicle. Did I drive illegally a few times? Yeah, a lot. It was stupid. But 2 years later, 2 years later after it all, so almost 3 years to the day that I got my license pulled, I go on the Wisconsin Department of Transportation, and you could type. So we're talking 2016 here, or 15, I think it was. So literally 3 years after, I waited it out. Didn't get anything. Didn't get pulled over. Wasn't driving a ton. Walked a lot. Like, I didn't buy a new car. Literally waited this out. Was driving Jen's car legally that she didn't know about. She was pissed off after the fact. Like, this really dumb negligence on my part. But I truly waited it out. So I'm like, you know what? I'm just gonna check how this is gonna work, because this has been like 3 years. Sure enough, I go on there and it says I'm eligible for reinstatement for a full license. It's a $200 cost. You got to go in and take your eye test, fill out a few forms, and you'll have your license back. I couldn't believe it. Like, I couldn't believe that I waited it out that long. The people at the DMV, there was nothing on my account that showed that I needed a breathalyzer in my car. I couldn't believe that worked. Like, granted, did I wait it out for 3 years stupidly? Like, yeah, that was really dumb. I didn't have a car. I lied about it. Lied to my friend's family. Like, why aren't you driving? Oh, I just don't have my car right now. Literally had no license. I mean, and waited out for 3 years. Incredible. In the class, as we wrap up the podcast, so this kind of funnels into to get a understanding of waiting this out. This never happens. Something in the paperwork got messed up, because there's no way that I should not, even when I got my license back fully, because after that year suspension I could have got it back no matter what without any other issues, which I didn't. I had to have that breathalyzer put in. I had to, like, that was part of the sentence. So anyways, paid before the class, paid the class right up front, wrote the big fat check to Fond du Lac County for the fine, so I paid that immediately, just to get that off my plate. But this class, very interesting. All kinds of people were in there. There was some younger kids like me. There was some people like that were actually mid 40s, and there were some people that were even in their 60s. The person who ran the class was not a professor. He was a retired sheriff from the Brown County, I believe. So he had a lot of very interesting to listen to. Going back, like, I actually got a lot out of those couple weeks that I was there. It didn't necessarily help my drinking per se, but I learned a lot about alcohol abuse. I learned a lot about, how the court system works with the DUIs, OWIs, alcohol-related issues. He told so many stories about stories that he arrested people, and stories that they went through, and everybody goes around and shares their OWI story within the 3 weeks, because there's probably about 20 people in there, and you do like workbooks, you do like things like that. Try to assess your drinking even more. And it did. I shouldn't say it didn't help my drinking, because it did. I wasn't. There was a time in that mid-20s where I was getting better, but I wasn't taking it seriously to actually stop drinking all completely. But I was getting better where I wasn't drinking as many nights a week. So we were going through the stories. So my story is just nothing compared to these other people. Like, some of the people are like, their car was flipped and in a ditch. Their car, I had a truck driver there who had to get his CDL. Like, losing your CDL is huge. And somehow taking this class, and like, he had to do all these quadruple, like, this was his career on the line. And a lot of people's jobs can be on the line after getting an OWI. So we go through. I gotta tell this story because this story is just great. So another kid probably around my age is just like, tells his story. He's like, well, we went to he was from the Fond du Lac area too, and he's like, yeah, we were at a Brewer game and we drank all day, and and we basically played rock paper scissors to figure out who was going to drive from Milwaukee back to Fond du Lac. And now this was a 1 o'clock or a 3 o'clock start day on a Saturday, so they were ready to raring to go back to the bars in the summer. So it was light out the whole ride home. So he landed on this guy. He drives home. The three other guys pass out in the back seat once they get out of traffic, basically, and they're on their way home. He gets pulled over by Quad Graphics just outside of Mayville there, and the sheriff comes over to the thing and sees the three guys passed out in the car, and driver goes, "Hey, something wrong, officer?" And officer goes, "Do you have any idea how fast you were going?" And he's like, "No." And he's like, "Well, you're on Highway 41. Do you know what the speed limit is?" He's like, "Yes, it was 65. It was 65 at the time." So the guy, he was right on it. He goes, "Well, you were actually going about 40 or 35 miles per hour on 41." So he was going extremely slow. So he gets pulled over. So that's how he got his OWI. But like everybody hearing his stories are like, it's so different. Whether it was driving home from a bar, whether it was driving home from a baseball game, whether it was drinking all day and because you have an alcohol problem. Like you saw all kinds of people were put into this class. So to end the class, you had to meet with the professor, the sheriff, the guy, and the instructor, I should say, so he could sign off that you passed the class and send the certificate to the courts. But then you kind of had a one-on-one, and he kind of talked to me and said, "Look, you're a young kid. You got a lot going for you, because he had to tell everybody like what you did for a profession, what you did for volunteer stuff." And he's like, "Look, you're doing this, you're drinking like this and making these decisions, yet you're going and coaching basketball and keeping these kids on the right path." And that kind of like really stuck with me for a while, and realized like, hey, you look at all this time you missed because of these things you had to do because of your drinking. I wish I would have taken that more seriously at the time, but that did stick with me. But he's really was a good person and good guy to instruct for that whole thing. So, man, I'm not trying to get too Debbie Downer on it, but that was the entire story of the OWI tobacco. I always joked with my friend, down the road, like after, a few months saying, realizing that nothing that bad happened. Yeah, you had all the stuff that I had to do, but it was an $1,800 ride home or a $2,400 ride home, I was told. But, looking back at it now, 8 years later, very thankful that nothing bad, like I didn't hurt anyone or myself. Like it was needed, it was bound to happen, and that was God's way of saying, hey, we're putting you, this is the way that it's gonna go. Like you gotta nip this now before you continue to keep driving and something even more major happens. So I'm really blessed to this day that it turned out how it did, because money and the class and the missed work and all that would have nothing to do with injuring somebody or injuring myself. So that's the OWI story. Just a few laughs in there. It was just a wild night and a wild process. Something that I'll never want to do again and never will do again, because it's definitely not worth it. So that's this week's episode. Coming up in April here, we do have Chad Smith coming back on the podcast. He's going to kind of dive deeper into his drinking issues, which I think we're all going to be interested to hear of how his life is and how he kind of turned out to turn to alcohol more. Also going to do some more fun stories. Trying to get some more interviews lined up. Got 3 more episodes here for the month of April. So everybody stay safe, stay healthy, stay inside, stay home. Only go out when needed. But otherwise, this is On the Wagon Podcast. Dan Spamore signing off. Have a great weekend.